It's mid-March here in my urban container garden, and I'm going to be talking about what I grow from seed versus what I buy transplants, what I start indoors, what I'll start outdoors. And what you need to know about my situation is I have very limited space. I have limited space indoors to grow seedlings. I have limited space outdoors as well. And that's just because I live in an urban environment. I don't have much of a yard. I have some really great container gardens that I've added on to over the years, but I'm pretty limited. And so I have to be really picky with what I choose to grow here in my garden. And so I want to first talk about what do I start indoors? And the type of vegetables that I'm going to be more likely to start indoors from seeds are going to be plants that are not the norm, some that are kind of more unique varieties. So, for example, an endive. This is something that I started indoor from seed this year. It takes a little longer, so I chose to start it indoor versus starting it outdoors. But endive is not something that I really see transplants of in the stores to be able to purchase. So those varieties are going to be a little more unique. That really the only way for you to grow them is if you start them from seed yourself. Those are the types of things. Another example of that this year is I started some mustard spinach. I've never grown mustard spinach before. This is a new one to me. So again, kind of a more unique variety that you're not going to be able to find transplants of to purchase. So those types of plants are the ones that I'm going to start from seed. Um, the other thing that I start from seed, and this is actually one of my favorite vegetable plants to grow. I have another video on this, but that's going to be Swiss chard. And while I do find Swiss chard at some stores in my area, there's not a whole lot of it. And I just love growing this. I love having a lot of it. And so I also will start the Swiss chard from seed indoors because it does take a little longer as well to mature. The other things I'm going to start from seed outdoor once the weather warms up and my containers are ready are going to be those root vegetables that you really don't want to transplant. So these are going to be things like carrots and beets and radishes and turnips. Now, I will say sometimes I go to the garden stores and they have transplants available for some of these. And while you could purchase them as seedlings and transplant them into your garden, it really is best practice to start these from seed because they are root vegetables. They don't like to be moved. They're kind of finicky. So it's really best to start them in one place and leave them there until they're ready to harvest versus transplanting. So those are things that I start from seed outdoors as well. Something else that I've started doing from seed just in the last couple of years are actually lettuces and spinach. So I used to buy these things as transplants from the gardening stores. And one year I just kind of decided to try it from seed myself. And so I planted a whole area of one of my containers with lettuce, and it grew so well and so quickly. And I liked that I could plant them a little bit closer when starting them from seed versus when you purchase them as transplants because you have to buy a lot more and then it gets expensive. And I just had this huge area of lettuce that I was able to keep harvesting. These are cut and come again vegetables. So, you cut it at the base and it grows a new head of lettuce. And so that's something that I've started growing from seed in my garden that I didn't initially do. Spinach is another one. Spinach grows rather quickly. And so I will start that from seed and it's ready to harvest before too long. That's another cut and come again one. And so, there's the piece of it where starting from seed, I do think is just better for the plant versus having to move it and, disturb the roots. But there's also the economy part of it where buying a packet of spinach seeds is going to be a lot less expensive than buying plant starts of spinach. And so some of these things that you can be starting from seed, it's really better for many different reasons. So what do I buy transplants of? Well, for me, like I said, don't have a lot of room. And so I tend to buy transplants of cabbage. And that's because I really don't need a lot of cabbage plants, and they do take quite a bit longer to grow from seed. And so I just buy like a 4-pack of those, once in the spring and then once in the fall when it's time to plant the fall cool crops. And that's all I really grow of cabbage because they just take up so much room and I just don't have a lot of space. So cabbages, and then as the season goes on, if I'm going to farmer markets and I have some space in my spring garden, sometimes I just can't help myself and I will, grab some other like kales or things like that. But that's kind of the way that I approach it. Like I said, it's changed over time and that's okay. So I would, be curious to know if you're a fellow vegetable gardener. Tell me in the comments, what do you start from seed versus what you buy transplant?